So I've been meaning to test this for quite some time. What is the best multi-target mount power you should be using? There's quite a few out there, and we did just get a new addition with this Space Gubby mount from the Astronautical Lockbox. However, it claims that it only has a maximum target of 8. That would mean it's a lot less effective than if you were to have a mount with the norm as we know it at 15. As far as we are aware, at least me personally from asking other players, mounts and other powers that are multi-target usually had a cap of 15. But I wanted to go and test this for myself to make sure that is actually how it works. Is this mount really only capped at 8 like it says in the blog? What other mounts are also at this cap? Is the legendary carpet then better than this for its vortex power if the legendary carpets say 15? Well, let's dive into all of that in this video. So I got, pretty much all the multi-target powers I had on my paladin here. That's most of the mounts. I will give you a list of which ones I do miss. But the way we went and tested them is went to the Imperial Citadel dungeon here, where you can have like an ad group. There's like 6 aside here, and you can go down here, get another 6 and another over here. Here, and you end up with there's like over 20 enemies here, and then you should be able to put your multi-target mount power in the middle of them and get all of that juicy damage. And then by looking at the actual logs, we can then see how many targets are actually getting hit. You can see all of the ones that I am hitting. There's quite a lot of them here, 27 if we count them all. So then you can go and check your mount power. How many hits did we get? We got 192, and then we can also have a look exactly what individual targets. This particular mount power I was using can hit a target 11 times. You can see exactly here which targets were getting hit, how often, and you can count the amount of targets then. And we do this for like all of the different mount powers. It took me quite a few hours to get through all of the ones I have, and still I miss a few. Ultimately, we end up with this right here, my little document, which basically shows all the data for these mounts. You can scroll down a little bit, there's a few more down there. What is interesting to note is the total magnitude of the power, and then that compared with the amount of hits it has, the amount of hits versus like 15 or more targets, and thus we find the target cap. So for example, this Deadly Drider form, which I did just show you there, has 11 hits per target. And then if we have loads of targets, we got on this, for example, test 187 hits. We just did another test right here and actually got a bit more hits, 192. And that just means, this mount has over 17 target cap. If we up this to 192, it's still going to round to about 17. It can be higher. I guess I can put like 17 plus there, but that throws an error here. So I just leave it as mathematically showing 17. It's easier. But then, you can also compare the maximum magnitude. So if you were to go multiply 17 by this much magnitude that the power does, you effectively have like 22,000 magnitude. And if we check out some other mounts, you can see like the Hag's Cauldron also does not appear to have a target cap. So these two mounts are very special in that regard. The Pegasus clearly has a 14 target cap. The Space Gubby clearly has a 15 target cap. Again, same test, they had the opportunity to hit more targets. I tested multiple times just to make sure, and they were only hitting 14 with the Pegasus, 15 with the Space Gubby mount, which is interesting because they claim it can only hit 8, just as we see here with the blog. Why is that incorrect? Maybe that is only for the daze effect, or they just don't really realize that it can actually hit 15, or they changed something after posting that blog. But it does make the mount then very, very good. 10,500 effective max magnitude when you can actually hit all of the targets. But the Deadly Driver form could get double that magnitude if it actually has the target available to do so. So yeah, there's a lot of data here. So let's break it down simply and give you my advice on what mount you should potentially be using. Be aware again, these are all the ones I do miss from this test, and I believe those, including all of the other ones that I have right here, is all of the multi-target mount powers there is in the game right now. Be aware we did add, say, the Dragon Bone Golem, because people can confuse it for a multi-target mount power, but it's actually single target. It can only hit one target. So it's not exactly clear cut on what you should be using. But one thing to note is, yes, the Space Gubby mount, with its ability to have schools in session, is a lot better than the Vortex from the legendary Flying Carpet. Better also than the Dark Unicorn or the Omen of Despair, which have their Vortex ability. Just because it can have a 15 target cap. The legendary Flying Carpet has an 8 target cap. The Black Unicorn and Omen of Despair also have an 8 target cap, but with less magnitude. So up there near the top is the Space Gubby School mount. It has that very nice effect of grouping up enemies, as you see here, and they just all get tightly bunched up and much easier to hit them all then with multi-target attacks from yourself. And it does pretty good damage because it can also hit up to 15 targets. But as soon as you have more than that, potentially you'll want to use a different mount power like the Drider form or the Cauldron, particularly if enemies are going to stick around for that duration. Like the Deadly Drider form needs 11 seconds to output all that damage. The Cauldron needs 9 seconds. Space Gubby only needs 3 seconds. And then there's like the Pegasus, which just 1 second, you cast it and it will deal the damage instantly. So it's like more burst damage. But the Pegasus still suffers from critical hits being reduced by your critical avoidance. Meaning if you're like at 45% critical avoidance, you would do that much less damage with the mount. Effectively just completely nerfing its damage, meaning it's not at all feasible for you to use. But keep in mind, there are some bonuses you can use to actually reduce your critical avoidance. For example, we can sit down here minus 6% because we have these sharp long boots, and thus using the Pegasus power for multi-target damage here is very good. When you go to negative crit avoidance, you're actually going to increase the damage of the Pegasus further than it can actually go. Like, you can also use this armor here for fighter and barbarians, reducing your crit avoidance further. And we're now down 12.4%. So you're going to increase the Pegasus mount power when it critically hits by 12.4% further than, what anybody else could. Yeah, it's a very bugged mount that shouldn't be having that effect. They did go and nerf the magnitude recently as well, but left that issue. Left it still getting reduced by a crit avoidance. Just be aware of that on this list here, and it's in the notes there. Also, like the Whirlwind and the Infernal War Machine, they both have the ability to like have the mount to like move forward, but if you have bad terrain, that mount might not move at all. And what happens is you only deal like 333 magnitude and you never get any collision damage, which means you only do like 33% of the potential mount's damage. And thus this would be dramatically lower, down to like just 3,000. And again, they only have a target cap of 10. But just be aware, it's not always necessary to have such a high target cap, because not all content has massive groups of enemies like this Imperial Citadel dungeon. You don't always have areas with so many adds, and you might not even run with players who can like comfortably tank and heal through having so many adds grouped up and then having enough like damage to be able to kill them in time before exhausting resources. Like, I can only survive here so long with regards to having health stones, encounters going on cooldown and things like that. Like, as soon as these enemies like deplete my divinity, and stamina, I'll just be dying. So you have to have good damage to be able to group up enemies like this, and otherwise you're just taking the groups one at a time, and then there's only like maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 enemies anyway. and so using a power with a target cap of 8 won't really be any like less damage than something that had, say, 15, because you're not even fighting that many. But overall, yeah, if we look at all of this data, what I can say is there is potential for the Deadly Dryad form and the Cauldron to output a lot of damage, like more than double than these other standard mounts we were using. Otherwise, Pegasus is still a very viable option because of its target cap of 14. You just have to be careful of critical avoidance, reducing its damage, meaning you want to run with gear that actually reduces your critical avoidance. Otherwise, just don't use it. And this new Space Gubby mount is very, very good. Target cap of actually 15 means it's very nice to group up enemies. It's actually going to group up a lot of them versus the Carpet, which you might be used to, has a target cap of only 8. Ultimately, if I had to choose one mount to go for, guys, it would be the Space Gubby mount, as being pretty much the most reliable and best multi-target mount combat power. Grouping up enemies, good damage, high target cap. If you want something for like grouping up 20, 30, 40 ads and killing them all together, if you're doing those kind of pulls and trying to kill them all together, then maybe run Deadly Dryad form or Hag's Cauldron if the enemies tend to live for 6 to 10 seconds. Like, even if there's 15 targets and the ads are gonna stand around for 5 seconds or more, the Deadly Dryad form is gonna do like the same amount of damage as Space Gubby. And as soon as there's like 20 enemies and more, then the Deadly Dryad form is going to pull ahead even further, even though they might only survive for 5 seconds, just because it doesn't seem to have a target cap at all. And its area is not too bad either. Just, it's surprising that it has potential. But again, be aware, it not having a target cap could be unintended, and that all of this can get changed at any time. Same with the Space Gubby mount. It could be intended that it only has 8 and they didn't realize it actually has 15. Overall, just be aware for yourself of the data and the potential different mounts have. It's pretty interesting to note that they do all have quite varying amounts of target caps here. Some have uncapped, like Deadly Dryad form and Hag's Cauldron. The rest have like 14, 15, 10. 8 is pretty standard across these ones. You get one with like 6, and 5 here is pretty common. More 8s there. And then, yeah, I just have the Dragonbone Golem in there because some people sometimes think it's multi-target, but it's only going to hit for 11 times, and each time it hits, it chooses one target. So its maximum magnitude is what it says in the tooltip, 3,450. And for some reason, the Hellfire engine can hit 6 times, but it's always only going to be one target. Even if I have 20 ads sitting there, it can't hit more than one target, which is a bit weird considering it only has like adding up to 1,050 magnitude. Again, these are the ones I have not tested. I would assume the Cosmic Stag is pretty much the same as the Celestial Stag and the Feywild Stag with their abilities. And then, yeah, there's some here that potentially could be good, but I just don't have them to test right now. You can, of course, follow the same test I did, particularly if you're on PC, to be able to check with Advanced Combat Tracker and yeah, check that for yourself. But like I said, if I was to choose one mount that's nice and reliable that you could use everywhere, it's the Space Gubby mount. And if you already have like the Dryad form, that can also be very good. At least if enemies aren't in like the one-shot threshold. If some other person can come along and do their daily power and everything's dead instantly, then maybe that's not so good to have something that needs a bit of time to output its damage. So once again, hopefully this helps. Thank you for watching. A massive thank you to all these channel members, and we'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.